There comes a moment in life when you realize that how you feel each morning is no longer automatic. It's not something you can take for granted. Perhaps you've noticed it already, a stiffness that wasn't there before, a fatigue that lingers, a sense that your body is communicating with you in a language you're still learning to understand. Most people respond to this shift by searching for solutions in all the wrong places. They look for a pill, a protocol, a quick fix that will return them to how they felt at 40. But what if the path to comfort and vitality in later years isn't about finding something new at all? What if it's about removing what no longer serves, simplifying what has become complicated, and finally listening to what your body has been trying to tell you for decades? This is not another video about anti-aging miracles. This is an exploration of something far more valuable, the quiet wisdom of living well in the body you have today. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The art of living well in later years. A thoughtful approach to aging with comfort and purpose. Part 1. Understanding the landscape of later life. There comes a point in life when the questions begin to shift. Instead of asking, "What should I achieve next?" the mind turns toward what truly matters now. Instead of measuring time in terms of future possibilities, there is a growing awareness of time as something precious and finite. This transition, which often becomes more pronounced around the age of 70 and beyond, represents not an ending but a profound shift in perspective, one that, when navigated thoughtfully, can yield some of the richest years of a lifetime. The way individuals approach this stage varies enormously, shaped by health, circumstances, personality, and the accumulation of a lifetime of experiences. Yet certain patterns emerge across cultures and throughout history that suggest universal principles for living well in later years. These principles have less to do with dramatic interventions or miracle solutions and everything to do with the quiet, daily choices that accumulate into a life of comfort, dignity, and meaning. This exploration considers several interconnected dimensions of later life. How the physical body responds to aging and what that means for daily comfort. How social connections and celebrations evolve. How environments shape well-being. And how the inner life of reflection and purpose develops. The thread connecting all these dimensions is intentionality, the practice of making choices aligned with one's current reality rather than simply continuing patterns established decades earlier. What follows is not a prescription, but an invitation to consider familiar aspects of daily life through a different lens. The goal is not to add more rules or restrictions to life, but to remove what no longer serves well, creating space for what genuinely enhances well-being. Part 2. The body in later years. Understanding physical changes. To make wise choices about physical comfort and activity. It helps first to understand what is happening within the body as it ages. These changes are neither failures nor diseases, but normal processes that have been unfolding since the day we were born. Recognizing them allows for adaptation rather than frustration. The changing landscape of skin. Human skin is a remarkable organ, performing functions of protection, sensation, temperature regulation, and immune defense. Over decades of life, it accumulates experiences just as the mind does: sun exposure, weather, chemicals, and the simple passage of time all leave their marks. As years advance, the skin naturally becomes thinner, the layer of fat just beneath the surface, which provides cushioning and insulation, diminishes. Oil glands produce less of the lubricating sebum that keeps skin supple and protected. Blood flow to the skin decreases, which affects both healing and temperature regulation. These changes mean that skin becomes more fragile, more prone to dryness and irritation, and slower to repair itself when damaged. This increased sensitivity explains why fabric choices matter more in later years. Materials that once felt comfortable may begin to cause itching, redness, or discomfort. Rough seams that went unnoticed previously may now create pressure points. Fabrics that trap heat and moisture against the body can lead to rashes or infections in skin folds. What was merely a matter of preference becomes, with time, a matter of physical comfort and health. The body's changing shape also affects how clothing fits. Natural shifts in posture, slight changes in bone structure, and redistribution of body fat mean that measurements that held steady for decades may gradually change. Garments that fit perfectly at 60 may feel restrictive at 75. Not because of weight gain, but because the body's proportions have subtly shifted. Recognizing this allows individuals to choose clothing that accommodates their current form rather than fighting against it. Joints, mobility, and the architecture of movement. Between the bones of the human skeleton lie the joints, remarkable structures that allow for the incredible range of motion humans enjoy. Over years of use, the cartilage that cushions these joints naturally wears thin. The synovial fluid that lubricates movement may decrease. Surrounding muscles, which support and stabilize joints, may lose some of their strength and mass. These changes explain why movement that once felt effortless may now require more conscious attention. Bending, reaching, twisting, all the ordinary movements of daily life may feel different than they once did. This is not necessarily a sign of disease, but of normal use over time, much like a well-worn path through a forest. The implications for daily life are practical rather than alarming. Clothing that restricts movement becomes more problematic when joints are less flexible. Tight sleeves make it harder to reach overhead. Narrow pant legs make bending more difficult. Stiff fabrics resist the body's natural movements rather than flowing with them. Footwear takes on particular importance because feet bear the entire weight of the body and provide the foundation for every step. The feet themselves change with age. Fat pads on the soles thin. Arches may flatten slightly. Toes may shift position. Shoes that once fit perfectly may no longer provide adequate support. The consequences of poor footwear extend throughout the body when feet are unstable. Ankles, knees, hips, and the back all compensate in ways that can lead to pain or injury. Circulation and the body's transportation system. The circulatory system, responsible for delivering oxygen and nutrients throughout the body and removing waste products, also undergoes natural changes with age. Blood vessels gradually lose some of their elasticity. The heart, a muscle itself, may not pump with quite the same force it once did. These changes mean that blood flow to extremities may be somewhat reduced, and the body's ability to regulate temperature may become less efficient. Clothing choices interact with circulation in important ways. Garments that fit too tightly around waist, legs, or arms can physically compress blood vessels, further restricting flow that may already be somewhat diminished. This is particularly significant for individuals with conditions that affect circulation, such as diabetes or peripheral artery disease. But even those in good health benefit from clothing that allows blood to move freely. Temperature regulation also becomes more challenging with age. The body's ability to sense temperature changes and respond appropriately may diminish. Older adults may not feel cold as acutely, yet their bodies lose heat more quickly. They may not notice overheating until it becomes problematic. Clothing that can be easily layered or removed allows for fine-tuning comfort throughout the day as conditions change. The immune system and environmental exposure. The immune system, that complex network of cells and processes that defends against pathogens, also changes over time. Some responses may become slower or less robust. The body may take longer to recognize and respond to new threats. This is why respiratory infections that cause mild symptoms in younger adults can be more serious for older individuals. This doesn't mean living in fear of every cough or sneeze, but rather making informed choices about environments and exposure. Crowded, Poorly ventilated spaces present higher risks, not because they are inherently dangerous, but because they increase the concentration of potential pathogens. Understanding this allows for practical strategies, choosing less crowded times for errands, ensuring good airflow in gathering spaces, being thoughtful about large events during respiratory illness season that reduce risk without eliminating social connection. The cumulative nature of physical wisdom. What emerges from understanding these physical changes is not a picture of decline, but of transformation. The body in later years has different needs and different sensitivities than the body of youth. Responding to these changes with thoughtful adaptation, choosing gentler fabrics, allowing for easier movement, protecting circulation, being mindful of environmental exposures, is not surrender, but wisdom. The individual who dresses for comfort rather than fashion, who chooses shoes for support rather than style, who creates environments that protect rather than challenge, is not giving up, but tuning in. This is the body's wisdom expressing itself through daily choices. Part 3. The social self, connection, celebration, and meaning. Human beings are fundamentally social creatures, shaped by millions of years of living in groups. This social nature does not diminish with age. If anything, the quality of connections becomes more central to well-being as the quantity of years left becomes more apparent. The evolution of social gatherings. Throughout life, social gatherings serve different purposes. Childhood birthdays mark growth and development. Young adult celebrations often center on achievement and adventure. Middle age brings gatherings focused on family, career milestones, and community building. In later years, the purpose of gathering may shift once again. The traditional birthday party, with its emphasis on the number of years accumulated, may begin to feel different. For some, the attention on age becomes uncomfortable, not because they are ashamed of their years, but because the number itself carries weight it did not once hold. Each birthday after a certain point is also an anniversary of losses, a reminder of friends and family no longer present, a marker of time passing rather than time accumulating. This does not mean birthdays should not be celebrated. It means the nature of celebration may need to evolve. Rather than focusing on the age attained, gatherings can honor the life lived. Rather than counting candles, families can count stories. Rather than emphasizing another year passed, they can emphasize the person who has passed through those years and the lives they have touched along the way. This shift from quantity to quality, from number to narrative, transforms the celebration into something deeper. The birthday becomes an occasion not for marking time, but for expressing gratitude, sharing memories, and reinforcing the bonds that give life meaning, grief, and the complexity of celebration. For those who have experienced profound losses, particularly the death of a child, celebrations can become extraordinarily complex. Birthdays are traditionally times when children express love and gratitude toward parents. When a child is no longer present to offer that expression, the day can become a piercing reminder of absence. In these circumstances, the pressure to celebrate can feel overwhelming. Well-meaning family members may plan gatherings, expecting the occasion to lift spirits. Instead, the event may amplify grief, forcing the bereaved parent to perform happiness while carrying an invisible weight. There is no single right way to navigate such situations. Some may find comfort in quiet reflection, spending the day in ways that acknowledge both the birthday and the loss. Others may prefer to mark the day with simple activities that provide distraction without demanding celebration. Still others may find that being with a very small circle of understanding loved ones offers the right balance of connection and space. The key principle is that the person being honored should guide the approach. Their comfort, their emotional state, their preferences should determine how the day is observed. Family members serve best by asking what would feel right rather than assuming. and by respecting the answer even if it differs from what they would choose. Health and the limits of celebration. Physical health inevitably influences social participation. Chronic conditions, pain, fatigue, and treatment schedules all affect how much energy is available for gatherings. This is not a character flaw or a failure of will, but a simple fact of biology. A person dealing with significant health challenges may genuinely want to attend a large celebration, but find that the effort required exceeds their available resources. The noise, the stimulation, the extended periods of sitting or standing, the effort of conversation, all draw from the same limited energy reserves needed for basic daily function. In such situations, the thoughtful approach scales the celebration to match capacity. A small gathering of 1 or 2 close friends or family members allows for genuine connection without overwhelming demands. A shorter visit, timed for when the person typically feels best, honors the occasion without exhausting the honoree. A quiet meal at home, with soft lighting and gentle conversation, may provide more joy than a crowded restaurant ever could. For those unable to gather in person, technology offers alternatives that were unavailable to previous generations. Video calls allow for seeing faces and hearing voices, for singing together across distances, for sharing a moment despite physical separation. These virtual connections are not perfect substitutes for presence, but they are genuine connections nonetheless. And they matter. Financial wisdom in celebration. The commercialization of celebrations has reached remarkable heights. Birthday parties now often involve rented venues, professional catering, elaborate decorations, and expensive gifts. The pressure to produce such events can create significant financial strain for older adults on fixed incomes or for family members with limited resources. Yet research on happiness consistently shows that beyond a certain point, spending on events does not produce proportional joy. The most meaningful celebrations are often the simplest: a home-cooked meal, a homemade cake, time spent in genuine conversation. These require minimal financial outlay, but maximum emotional investment. Choosing simplicity over extravagance relieves financial pressure while often producing more authentic connection. When the focus shifts from production to presence, from things to people, celebrations become less stressful and more nourishing. The person being honored feels seen rather than showcased, loved rather than celebrated at. The deeper purpose of gathering. Underlying all these considerations is a fundamental truth about human nature. We need each other. Social connection is not merely pleasant but essential, as basic to well-being as food and shelter. The challenge in later years is not whether to connect, but how to connect in ways that honor current realities. This might mean different types of gatherings than in earlier decades. It might mean smaller groups, shorter visits, quieter environments. It might mean more one-on-one time and fewer large parties. It might mean prioritizing depth over breadth, spending time with those who truly matter rather than spreading energy across many casual connections. The goal is not to maintain social patterns established at 50, but to develop new patterns appropriate for 75. This requires honesty about energy levels, health, and preferences. It requires communication with loved ones about what works and what doesn't. And it requires letting go of guilt about not meeting others' expectations, focusing instead on connections that genuinely nourish. Part 4. Environment as silent influence. Where we spend our time shapes us in ways both obvious and subtle. The places we inhabit influence our mood, our energy, our safety, and our sense of possibility. In later years, attention to environment becomes increasingly important as the body's reserves for coping with environmental challenges diminish. The comfort of familiar places. There is a reason why older adults often prefer familiar environments. Familiarity reduces cognitive load when in a known space. The brain does not need to constantly process new information, assess risks, or figure out navigation. Mental energy that would be spent on orientation can instead be directed toward more enjoyable pursuits. Familiar environments also provide a sense of competence and control in one's own neighborhood. It is known which streets have smooth sidewalks and which have cracks, which stores are easy to navigate and which are crowded, which parks have benches for resting and which do not. This knowledge allows for confident movement through the world in ways that unfamiliar places do not. This preference for familiarity is not a sign of rigidity, but of wisdom. The brain, after decades of processing information, has learned what matters and what does not. It conserves energy by gravitating toward known patterns, reserving its resources for what truly requires attention. The risks of unfamiliar territory. When older adults do venture into unfamiliar places, the risks increase proportionally to the degree of unfamiliarity. Navigation requires more attention. Potential hazards are not pre-identified. Emergency resources are not mentally mapped. The cognitive load of managing in a new environment can be exhausting, even before considering physical demands. For those with mobility challenges, unfamiliar environments pose additional physical risks. A step that is slightly higher than standard, a slope that is slightly steeper than expected, a surface that is slightly more slippery. These minor variations, easily managed in familiar settings, can become hazards when encountered unexpectedly. This does not mean older adults should never explore new places. It means exploration should be undertaken thoughtfully, with companions who can provide support, with advanced research about accessibility and safety, with plans for rest and recovery, and with willingness to turn back if conditions prove challenging. Environments that diminish. Some environments are best avoided entirely, not because they are dangerous in themselves, but because they are incompatible with the dignity and well-being of later life. Gambling establishments, bars focused on loud nightlife, and other venues catering primarily to younger crowds typically offer little that supports the needs of older adults and much that may compromise comfort or reputation. These environments often involve secondary risks as well: secondhand smoke, excessive noise that can damage hearing, crowds that increase infection risk, and the presence of individuals who may not have honorable intentions. Even if the older adult personally avoids problematic behaviors, the environment itself creates exposures that may be harmful. More fundamentally, such places simply do not align with the values and priorities that often emerge in later life. The wisdom of years tends to direct attention toward what is genuine, meaningful, and nourishing. Environments built on artificial stimulation, transient pleasure, or questionable ethics hold little appeal for those who have learned what truly satisfies. The challenge of crowded spaces. Crowded public spaces present multiple challenges that increase with age. The physical risk of being jostled or bumped is greater when balance may be less stable and bones may be more fragile. A stumble that a younger person would quickly recover from could lead to a serious fall for an older adult. The infection risk in crowded spaces is also greater for older adults, whose immune systems may respond more slowly to pathogens. Respiratory illnesses spread readily where people are in close contact, and what might be a mild inconvenience for a younger person could be a serious health event for someone older. The sensory experience of crowds can also be overwhelming. Noise levels that younger people barely notice may be painful for those with hearing sensitivity. Visual chaos of moving bodies and flashing displays may be disorienting for those with certain visual conditions. The sheer volume of stimulation can exhaust the nervous system, leaving the individual depleted rather than enriched. Practical strategies help manage these challenges without requiring complete withdrawal from community life. Shopping during off-peak hours. Choosing smaller local venues over massive destinations. Visiting parks and libraries rather than crowded events. These choices maintain engagement while reducing exposure to crowd-related risks. Places of memory and grief. Cemeteries and other sites associated with deceased loved ones occupy a special category in the geography of later life. For those who have lost many family members and friends over decades, these places can become emotionally overwhelming. Each visit may stir grief for multiple losses rather than a single loved one. Walking among headstones may trigger a cascade of memories, funerals attended, final conversations, the accumulation of absence that marks a long life. Rather than feeling connected to those who have died, the visitor may feel only the weight of loss and the loneliness of survival. Alternative ways of honoring loved ones can provide connection without this emotional toll. Keeping photographs displayed at home allows daily acknowledgement of those who have died. Lighting a candle on significant dates creates a quiet moment of remembrance. Sharing stories with family members keeps memories alive without requiring cemetery visits. Family members can support older relatives by taking responsibility for cemetery maintenance and visits while encouraging gentler forms of remembrance at home. This honors both the deceased and the living, acknowledging loss while protecting emotional well-being. Creating personal sanctuary. Given the challenges of various external environments, the importance of home as sanctuary becomes clear. Home should be a place of comfort, safety, and ease, an environment that supports rather than challenges, that restores rather than depletes. This means attending to practical details that affect daily life. Good lighting reduces fall risk and eye strain. Comfortable seating supports joints and encourages relaxation. Easy access to frequently used items reduces reaching and bending. Pleasant views and personal objects provide aesthetic enjoyment and connection to memory. Home should also be adaptable, able to accommodate changing needs without requiring major disruption. Wide doorways that could accommodate a walker if needed. A bedroom on the main floor for times when stairs are difficult. Bathrooms with grab bars already installed. These features, incorporated thoughtfully, allow home to remain a sanctuary even as circumstances change. Part 5. The inner life, purpose, reflection, and meaning. Beyond the physical and social dimensions of later life lies the inner world, the realm of thought, reflection, and meaning that becomes increasingly central as external demands diminish. This inner life, cultivated over decades, provides resources that no external circumstance can diminish. The accumulation of wisdom. Wisdom is often described as the ability to make sound judgments based on knowledge and experience. By later life, individuals have accumulated vast amounts of both. They have seen patterns play out, watched causes produce effects, observed human nature in its many variations. This accumulated understanding provides a foundation for navigating complexity that no amount of book learning can match. This wisdom manifests in daily life as discernment, the ability to distinguish what matters from what does not, to allocate energy where it will have effect, to recognize situations that are worth engaging and those best left alone. It is the quiet confidence that comes from having weathered many storms and learned that most storms do pass. Cultivating wisdom means staying engaged with life, continuing to observe and reflect, remaining curious about human nature and the world. It means sharing observations when appropriate, but also holding them lightly. Recognizing that each person's path is unique and what worked for one may not work for another. The shift in temporal perspective. One of the most profound changes in later life is the shift in how time is experienced. In youth, time stretches forward endlessly. The future seems infinite. In middle age, time is experienced as a resource to be managed, allocated across competing demands. In later years, time becomes precious in a new way, not because there is too little, but because its finitude is now fully appreciated. This shift in temporal perspective changes what feels important. Accumulating more possessions matters less. Deepening relationships matters more. Achieving new goals matters less. Appreciating what already exists matters more. Preparing for a distant future matters less. Living fully in the present matters more. This is not morbid or depressing, but clarifying. Knowing that time is limited focuses attention on what truly matters. It becomes easier to let go of trivial concerns, to release resentments, to prioritize genuine connection over social obligation. The finitude of life, fully accepted, becomes a gift that illuminates what is real. The practice of reflection. Reflection is the mental habit of turning experience into understanding. It involves revisiting events, considering their meaning, extracting lessons, and integrating insights into one's sense of self and world. Without reflection, experience remains merely experience, events that happen without contributing to growth. In later life, reflection can take many forms. Some keep journals, writing regularly about thoughts and observations. Others find that conversation with trusted friends or family members serves the same purpose. Still others reflect through creative expression, painting, music, gardening, any activity that allows the mind to process while the hands are occupied. The content of reflection also shifts with age. Earlier in life, reflection might focus on achievement, what was accomplished, what still needs doing. Later, reflection tends toward appreciation, what has been received, what has been learned, what has been loved. This shift from doing to being, from achieving to appreciating, marks a deep maturation of the inner life. Purpose beyond production. Throughout much of life, purpose is often tied to production, raising children, building careers, creating things, achieving goals. These forms of purpose are real and valuable, but they depend on external measures of success. When children leave home, careers end, and the pace of production slows. Purpose must find new grounding. In later life, purpose often shifts from doing to being, from producing to presence. Simply being fully present for others becomes a form of contribution. Offering attention, listening deeply, sharing wisdom when requested. These are not passive activities, but active forms of engagement that enrich both giver and receiver. Purpose may also be found in tending to relationships, to memories, to the natural world, to the small beauties of daily life. The person who tends a garden, who maintains connections across generations, who preserves family stories, who simply notices and appreciates the world around them. This person is living with purpose as real as any career achievement. The integration of a life. One of the great tasks of later years is integration, bringing together all the disparate threads of a life into a coherent whole. This involves accepting both successes and failures, joys and sorrows, gains and losses, as equally part of one's story. It means recognizing that the person one has become is the product of all that has happened, not just the parts that were chosen or desired. Integration does not require resolving every contradiction or understanding every event. Some things remain mysterious. Some losses remain painful. Some choices remain ambiguous. Integration means holding all of it together, allowing the whole to be what it is without demanding that it be different. This integrated sense of self provides a foundation for facing whatever comes next. The person who has made peace with their past is better able to engage their present. The person who accepts their limitations is better able to work within them. The person who knows who they are is less vulnerable to the opinions and expectations of others. Part 6. Daily practices that support well-being. The principles discussed so far: understanding physical changes, nurturing social connection, attending to environment, cultivating inner life, find expression in daily practices. These are not dramatic interventions, but small, consistent choices that accumulate into a life of comfort and meaning. Attending to the body's signals. The body in later years communicates more clearly than it once did. Discomfort is not merely annoyance, but information. Pain is not simply to be tolerated, but to be understood. Fatigue is not weakness, but a signal that reserves are depleted and rest is needed. Learning to read these signals accurately and respond appropriately is a skill that develops over time. It involves distinguishing between discomfort that signals a need for change and discomfort that is simply part of being alive. It involves knowing when to push through and when to yield, when to seek help and when to self-manage. This attentiveness extends to all aspects of physical experience. How does a particular fabric feel against skin? How do shoes affect feet after an hour of walking? How does a certain food sit in the stomach? How does a particular activity affect energy levels the next day? These observations, accumulated over time, provide guidance for daily choices. Creating supportive routines. Routines provide structure that reduces decision fatigue and ensures that important activities occur. In later years, thoughtful routines can support well-being without requiring constant attention and planning. A morning routine might include gentle movement to ease stiff joints, a nutritious breakfast to fuel the day, time for reflection or reading to center the mind. An afternoon routine might include rest when energy naturally dips, social connection to combat isolation, outdoor time to gain light and air. An evening routine might include preparations for comfortable sleep, winding down activities that calm the nervous system, gratitude practice that ends the day on a positive note. The specific content of routines matters less than their presence. Routines provide predictability that reduces anxiety, structure that ensures needs are met, and rhythm that connects days into a meaningful flow. Maintaining connection. Social connection requires intention in later years. When work no longer provides daily contact with others, when children are occupied with their own lives, when friends move away or pass on, the social circle naturally shrinks unless actively maintained. This maintenance can take many forms. Regular phone calls with distant loved ones keep relationships alive. Participation in community activities, book clubs, exercise classes, volunteer opportunities provide structured social contact. Hosting small gatherings at home creates occasions for connection without requiring travel. Even brief daily interactions with neighbors, store clerks, or service providers contribute to a sense of belonging in the community. The quality of connections matters more than quantity. A few relationships characterized by mutual understanding and care provide more nourishment than many superficial contacts. Prioritizing depth over breadth. Investing energy in relationships that truly matter is a form of wisdom applied to social life. Engaging the mind. Mental engagement supports cognitive health throughout life. The brain, like other organs, benefits from regular use. Challenging it with new information, novel problems, and varied experiences helps maintain its capabilities. This engagement need not take the form of formal education or structured puzzles, though those can be valuable. Reading widely, learning new skills, engaging in stimulating conversation, traveling when possible, taking up new hobbies. All these activities keep the mind active and growing. The key is novelty and variety. Doing the same crossword puzzle every day exercises specific skills but does not challenge the brain broadly. Learning a new language, by contrast, engages multiple cognitive systems simultaneously. Trying activities that feel slightly difficult, that require genuine effort, provides the richest mental stimulation. Finding beauty and awe. The capacity for wonder does not diminish with age. If anything, the appreciation of beauty may deepen as one recognizes its fleeting nature. A sunset, a flower, a piece of music, a kind gesture, these small beauties, noticed and appreciated, enrich daily life immeasurably. Research suggests that experiences of awe, the feeling of being in the presence of something vast and mysterious, have particular benefits for well-being. Awe shifts attention away from individual concerns towards something larger, reducing stress and increasing feelings of connection. For older adults, whose personal concerns may include genuine challenges, this shift in perspective can be especially valuable. Finding beauty and awe requires only attention. A walk in nature, time spent with art or music, contemplation of the night sky, observation of human kindness, all are available to anyone who slows down enough to notice. This practice of attention, cultivated over time, transforms ordinary days into something richer. Part 7. The integration of wisdom. Living with intention. The thread running through all these considerations is intention, the practice of making choices aligned with one's current reality and deepest values. Intention stands in contrast to habit, which continues patterns established long ago without questioning whether they still serve. It stands in contrast to reaction, which responds to external pressures without internal guidance. Living with intention means regularly asking, does this choice serve me now? Is this pattern still appropriate? Does this activity nourish or deplete? These questions, honestly considered, guide adaptation as circumstances change. Intention also means accepting that not everything can be controlled. The body will change. Loved ones will be lost. Energy will fluctuate. Intention does not mean controlling these realities, but responding to them thoughtfully rather than reflexively. It means choosing how to meet what cannot be changed. The balance of acceptance and agency. A central challenge of later life is balancing acceptance and agency, accepting what cannot be changed while exercising agency over what can. This balance is dynamic, shifting as circumstances change. What must be accepted today may become changeable tomorrow. What seems within control may prove not to be. Acceptance is not passive resignation, but active recognition of reality. It means acknowledging physical limitations without letting them define identity. It means grieving losses while continuing to engage with what remains. It means living fully within current constraints rather than waiting for constraints to lift. Agency is not frantic effort, but thoughtful action. It means making choices that shape experience within the bounds of what is possible. It means directing energy where it can have effect rather than wasting it on what cannot be changed. It means exercising the freedom that remains even when much has been lost. The wisdom of later life lies in discerning the difference between what can and cannot be changed, and responding appropriately to each. The gift of perspective. Perhaps the greatest resource of later years is perspective, the ability to see current challenges in the context of a long life. Problems that once seemed overwhelming now appear manageable. Setbacks that once felt catastrophic now reveal themselves as temporary. Conflicts that once consumed energy now seem trivial. This perspective is not achieved through effort, but accumulated through experience. Having weathered many storms, the older adult knows that most storms pass. Having lost much and continued, they know that loss is not the end. Having seen human nature in its many variations, they are less surprised by folly and more appreciative of virtue. This perspective blesses not only the individual who holds it, but all those they encounter. The calm presence of someone who has lived long and learned much provides stability for younger generations navigating their own storms. The wisdom earned through decades becomes a gift to family and community, continuing to grow. The notion that growth stops at a certain age is one of the great myths about later life. In reality, growth continues as long as life continues, though its nature may change. Later life growth is less about acquiring new skills or accumulating achievements and more about deepening understanding, expanding compassion, and integrating experience. This growth is visible in those who age well. They become more themselves. Their essential qualities refined by time. Kindness deepens into compassion. Intelligence deepens into wisdom. Strength deepens into resilience. The person they have always been becomes more fully expressed. This growth requires engagement with life, continuing to show up, to care, to participate. It requires openness to new experience even while valuing the old. It requires willingness to be changed by what life brings rather than hardening against it. The person who remains open continues to grow until the very end. Conclusion. The art of living well. Living well in later years is not a matter of following rules or adhering to prescriptions. It is an art, cultivated over time, expressed through daily choices. Each person must discover their own expression of this art, shaped by their unique circumstances, values, and preferences. Yet certain principles appear consistently among those who age well. They attend to their bodies with kindness rather than criticism. They nurture connections that matter and release those that do not. They create environments that support rather than challenge. They cultivate inner resources of reflection and meaning. They balance acceptance of what is with agency over what can be changed. They continue to grow, to learn, to engage. These principles are not secrets revealed only to a few, but wisdom available to anyone willing to pay attention. The body speaks clearly to those who listen. Relationships reveal their quality to those who attend. Environments shape experience in ways that can be felt. The inner life deepens with cultivation. The years beyond 70 offer opportunities that younger decades cannot provide. Freedom from earlier pressures and expectations. Clarity about what truly matters. Perspective that transforms challenges into manageable events. Time to appreciate what has been built, loved, and learned. Embracing these opportunities requires letting go of patterns that no longer serve. It requires honesty about current realities. It requires courage to adapt, to change, to become. And it requires trust that the person one is becoming, shaped by all that has gone before, is worthy of care and respect. The art of living well in later years is ultimately the art of being fully oneself, not the self of youth or middle age, but the self that has emerged through decades of experience. This self, unique and irreplaceable, deserves to be honored through choices that support comfort, dignity, and meaning. This is the wisdom of later years, available to all who seek it. The most important thing to remember is this. Living well in later years is not about fighting against time, but about making peace with it, working with your body rather than against it, and discovering that the richness of life has never depended on the number of years behind you, but on the depth of attention you bring to each day. If these reflections have stirred something in you, a recognition, a question, a memory, we would be honored to hear your thoughts in the comments. What has your own experience taught you about the art of growing older? And if you would like to continue exploring this vast and vital subject, we invite you to browse the other videos in this library and to subscribe so that you never miss new wisdom as it arrives. Until next time, may you move through your days with comfort, with dignity, and with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing what truly matters. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.